we get rolling with this week's video, I do believe we have a secret giveaway winner to announce. So there were 70 people who entered to win a free drum scan from my friend Michael Strickland. And so I had a random number generated for all of those and chose a random winner, and the winner is Alan Varley. So I will reach out to you, Alan, in just a little bit, give you a chance to maybe watch this video and see your name called. But I'll shoot you an email and work out something between you and Michael to get the film scanned. And if anyone else is looking to have their film scanned, definitely reach out to Michael Strickland. You'll find his link down below in the show notes. He's the one that does all my scans and does a great job. He's actually out in the field right now on a shooting trip, but he'll be back pretty soon. But this week's video is all about my summer travels, and there's a nice little surprise at the end. I hope you guys enjoy. What is going on, everyone? So in this week's video, I want to talk about my summer travels because it was in late August that my wife and I went on our annual camping trip, because we always go on a camping trip during the summer. It's not a dedicated photo trip. Sometimes I'll bring cameras, sometimes I don't. But she wanted to go up to the Pacific Northwest, so I decided to go up to Mount Rainier and then down to the Redwoods. And for those of you that are not familiar with the Western US and the distances and scale of things, first of all, California is a huge state. It's massive. Driving from Southern California, which is where I live, up to Northern California alone is a pretty long drive. But then you go up to Oregon and up into Washington. And our first day of driving on the trip, when we were heading up to Mount Rainier in Washington, the first stage was 15 hours of driving, which brought us up to kind of southern central Oregon area. And so it was 950 miles that we covered on that first day, which was a really long drive. And then the next day we went up to Mount Rainier, which is up in Washington State, which is another 4 hours or so. And it was definitely a bit smoky up there because there's all kinds of wildfires that are kind of burning up in the region. But we stayed in Mount Rainier for a total of 4 nights. And the first day that we were there, it was really smoky, but then it started kind of clearing out day by day. But we did all kinds of really awesome hikes. We had a really good campsite, so I was really, really happy with that. And we had a great time, just kind of getting to know the area, because it's a place I've seen pictures of before, and I was just kind of curious about the lay of the land and all that. Then we went down to the Redwoods, and so that was another, I think it was like maybe like 7-hour drive or something like that, down to Northern California, and stayed there in Jedediah Smith Redwood State Park for 5 nights, and that was a beautiful campground as well. And really, really enjoyed our time in the Redwoods. And spent a lot of time going to all the various state parks, and there's also National Park. They're all kind of combined into this one kind of disjointed area where they're all kind of separated, but they're all kind of run the same way. So basically I was able to hit trails in all these different areas and really get to know the area, which was really nice. But then when I got back from the trip, I was talking to some photographer friends, and they're like, hey, I really look forward to seeing the photos that you got on the trip. And they're a little surprised when I said, I didn't bring my camera. Because I think as photographers, we're kind of expected to have a camera with us at all times. And I always look for that, that perfect photo and this and that when the conditions are just right. But honestly, there's times that I am perfectly happy leaving the camera behind, because especially with large format, you have to have a different sort of mentality when shooting a camera like that, which is at times, it can make things a little bit, I don't know if stressful is the word, but you just have to be in a kind of a different mindset, which is not necessarily the mindset I want to have when going on just kind of a fun camping trip. So I did not bring the camera with me. I did bring my A7S II, which is the camera I'm recording this with, which is my primary kind of video setup. Also brought along my little RX100 just for trail, snapshot kind of photos. But I'm going to take you back to 2007, which was the first time I'd really spent a fair amount of time, me and my wife, just kind of checking out the Arizona, Utah kind of area, because we went on this trip. It was It was probably about a 2-week trip, and we visited a lot of the sort of iconic areas that everyone goes to, you know, Antelope Canyon, Horseshoe Bend, the Wave, Buckskin Gulch, all kinds of areas, you know, Zion, Bryce, went to the north rim of the Grand Canyon, and just to kind of get this big overview of the whole area, because it's an area that at that point I'd seen all kinds of pictures of and I was curious about. And I brought along the camera. At the time it was a digital camera, and I was thinking that this was going to be a photo trip, but looking back at it, I really didn't have any photos from that trip that, I mean, none of it stands up now. But what I did gain from that trip was a lot of knowledge about the area. So going on that trip, driving all those roads, checking out the areas, getting a feeling for the conditions, seeing the colors, the textures, and being inspired by all the stuff I saw. That proved to be incredibly valuable, because all the trips I've gone back to over the years to those areas, I've sort of relied on that information from that first trip. And so that's kind of what this trip was for this summer trip, which was, you know, getting really familiar with a lot of the different state parks and national park areas for the Redwoods, as well as Mount Rainier, just kind of getting a feel for the lay of the land, and kind of sort of building a library of the things I saw that were very photogenic and that I would like to capture at some point if I can find the right areas, and, you know, hitting the trails and becoming familiar with the area, because it is an area that I will be returning to probably this spring. I'm thinking about doing a dedicated trip up to the Redwoods. And now I have a pretty good feeling as far as the trails, the conditions, and everything that I really do want to shoot, because when my wife and I went on that first trip to Arizona and Utah, I gotta say, it was pretty intimidating seeing some of these areas and not really having a plan as far as how to capture it. And the same thing, you know, just wandering through a redwood grove, same sort of thing. It's absolutely beautiful, but trying to figure out how you're going to capture it is a whole nother thing. So that's something I definitely look forward to doing in the spring when I return and the conditions are even more ideal for photography. So if you guys are ever looking to sort of build up your portfolio in an area, don't put the pressure on yourself as far as going there and having to walk away from that trip with all these portfolio shots. Just think about, you know, just planning an overall trip to the area, kind of take the time to sort of soak it all in, kind of absorb it all. And then based on what you learn from there, go back and then do kind of dedicated trips to certain areas that you find to be pretty productive. I will leave you with something kind of interesting this week, which is a bunch of video clips I kind of strung together from the Redwoods, because I did bring the A7S II, I did bring my motorized slider. So as we were hiking along, I would kind of set up the camera, record some clips here and there, and I'll give a little preview as far as what to expect from my spring trip to the Redwoods, though hopefully with some fog and some other sort of atmospherics as well. But I want to thank everyone for watching, and I hope you enjoy these clips of the Redwoods.